Awesome. So, welcome, guys, to the Invisible Practice Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest with us, Jeremy Griffith. So, Jeremy, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
I'm all right. How are you, Al?
Uh, Very well, very well. I'm just excited. Can't wait to see what he has to tell us about his work, his thoughts, his life as well, like his magic life. We are not going to asking about like partners in the high school, just about magic. So be calm.
Yeah. So,
Feel
what about your
free
first
to
kiss,
tell
Jeremy?
me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, it's good we don't go back there. I was kind of a mess until about 28. And then I got my adult feet under me. Until then it was kind of a mess. So yeah.
Ah, you clean up well. Looks
Magic.
like it.
So you mean like your first kiss happened when you quit magic and you leave magic on a side and then you said, I am a normal person.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's a
yeah. Yeah,
freaking
finally. Yeah. That's right, yeah. You were like, oh, he seems kissable now. Yeah, perfect.
It's happened to me as well. Welcome to the club.
Good. There you go. Oh, yeah. But no, I don't know. For me, like magic was always, it was always in the background. It was always like in the back of my brain. So even when I left it publicly, that bug never stopped biting. Right? It was still
Mhm.
something that like I couldn't put down the cards. I just didn't want to show anyone. You know, mainly because I just like when I tell people that I burned out, I didn't burn out on magic per se. I burned out on the type of magic I felt like I had to do. You know, which everyone, I feel like everyone gets to that point at some point, especially if you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, right? You're not exploring, you're not trying.
Mhm.
I got to remember that I got to look up because that's where the camera is. But I don't know. I'm glad I sort of accidentally found my way back, and I'm glad that I did. But I definitely had to go through normal life. I finally had to become kissable again to like, to appreciate magic for what it could be instead of what I was turning it into. I don't know if that makes sense.
So, what was the feeling like? You say you had the feeling like you had to do a certain kind of magic.
Yeah, okay. So I was flat broke, right? I was doing everyone. This is why I sort of warn people against this. Everyone had told me, do the thing you love and you'll never work a day in your life, which is probably true. But what most people aren't warned about is that if you are forced to do the thing that you love in order to make ends meet, and you're not greatly successful, it may taint the thing that you love because now you're having to do it. Right now it's forced upon you. Whereas most creative aspects, I feel like I'm most creative when you just leave me alone.
Mhm.
Right? If you just let me be me for a little bit, right? Give me a coffee, a table, and a close-up pad, and I could go for hours, right? That's not really a big deal. But if you told me you need to have 4 releases out by the end of the month, I'll pull my hair out, you know. So I really do think that like the fact that I stepped away, that I wasn't a professional anymore, that I didn't feel obligated to only do the type of magic that would get me paid, I feel like that was when everything finally hit. Because I've been doing magic from like 7 on up, right? I was part of the Magic Castle at age 14. So it was very, very much a part of my
Mhm.
life. And the second it became professional, when you're a kid and you get paid $100 to do an hour's worth of work, you're rich. But when you become an adult and you have to like make ends meet and you have to figure out life in general, now you're realizing that, okay, yeah, you might be paid $100 an hour, but if you only ever get 2 shows a week, you're getting $200 to do the thing that you love, but you're scrounging. And I hated that feeling. I hated grinding it out. It didn't feel good. And then by age 22, I was just done. I didn't
Mhm.
want to do it anymore. And I was in college and I wasn't doing that well. I wasn't being, I couldn't focus on the things that I really enjoyed. I thought that I had to keep doing magic, right? Because that was what I was known for, right? So I thought that that was the only thing that I was allowed to do. And so I just sort of dropped out of everything too. I didn't just drop out of magic. I dropped out of college, and it it was probably one of the better things that I did. I'm not
Mhm.
saying drop out of school and everything will turn out great, but what I am saying is that if you find yourself going down the road that leads toward oblivion, the most progressive step that you could take is to stop and potentially back up, right? So I stopped and I backed up and I spent the next few years just sort of soul searching. Again, I was a complete mess. But then by around age 28, between 28 and 30, I finally sort of got my feet under me and magic took off. I like fell in love with it all over again and it never stopped. I love swimming in it, probably because I was an adult. I could appreciate it as an adult. And it's a completely different view from a full life experience to look at the thing that you loved as a child and now be able to appreciate the nuance, being able to appreciate all of the contributors. You know, I used to look down at the people who were older than me, like, oh, they're doing the same old thing, completely forgetting that when they had invented it, it was completely new, right? And what they were doing is being recognized for the massive contribution they had put into magic. All of the things that I was standing on, I looked down and realized it was people. It was the shoulders of giants that I was standing on, not just books. So anyway, sorry, I'm rambling. You go.
No, dude, go on. Ramble as much as you want. But it sounds very much like this, the psychological research. You probably also heard about it. Like there is this research being done that the moment that there is an incentive for you and to do something that you love, most likely that feeling of love will fade.
I'd agree with that. I'd say that's exactly what happened. The second that you put a carrot in front of me and you told me to go for the carrot and to use the thing that I love to get that carrot, it made the carrot spoil. It was definitely.
Which is interesting because like we all of us know Shane Cobalt. We're all friends with Shane. And the thing was that I talked with Shane about this as well. And what he realized this very early on, like he studied psychology and theater in like college. And he immediately said like, oh shit, but I want to stay in love with magic. So what he started to do was he started to research every facet of magic. He was like, okay, maybe I have to make ends meet with close-up with cards, but now let's just start studying stagecraft and illusions and mentalism. You know, just sort of to keep that little hobby and that fascination within magic. And he would like circle those things around to stay in love, like he said.
See, that was a smart play. I really feel like that probably kept his sanity. I really, honestly, probably the best advice that I ever received was go find something else to enjoy, right? Go study something that draws your interest. It's okay if you still do magic, but go do something else too, right? And it will feed your magic.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that was true because I was math and physics, right? I was all math and physics all through college, right? And I thought the two don't meet. Completely forgetting that I went to the college that Percy Diaconis.
Really?
College. I went to UCI, right?
Oh,
Percy Diaconis used to teach at UCI. And it never clicked. Like the two never met. And it was only afterwards I realized like goddamn, I could have gone on like my lunch break and hung out with Percy. Like fine. It only hurts a little. I'll be fine. It's okay. But
it's interesting because you're talking about your experience and your relationship with magic and how everything changes, you know, in your life related to magic. And there is a book called Close Up Elegance by Davide Costi. He's an Italian magician, an amazing magician. Okay. And he has an essay in the book, and the essay is called The Curve, okay? And he talks about our process, you know, in magic. There is like a dark side and a bright side, okay? So in the dark side, you start like buying tricks. Then the second step is like selecting these tricks. Then you start buying books, random books. Then you start like selecting and picking, you know, you become a very selective person on the books that you're buying. And then you're in the middle, and then you start to go to the bright side, you know, like try to think like magic can be something else and changing everything, you know? And he describes something like a moment, you know, and we are not, I'm not going to ask you about a day or a time or a year. I want to ask you about the moment when you felt like this click to start to see magic in a different way, as you were saying. And there's a second question related to this one. What do you do when your hobby or your passion, you know, starts to have a different dimension and to grow? In my case, it was my job for some years. So I have to transform my relationship a little bit with magic, like to make the difference between what is going to be for my performances to pay bills and what is going to be like to chill, to enjoy, and to find. I'm not saying that I didn't enjoy the other part, but I'm saying like trying to find a different stimulates. I don't know if it was clear enough.
No, that makes sense. There's a lot there. So let me let's start with the beginning. Remind me what the first question was.
Like about when did you feel and how was like this click to see like the difference between magic is like something that I like, but then you start to realize it could be like something else, like something deep, to push you to study more and more.
Actually, I can tell you the exact moment. I was at a restaurant late at night, and there was after I had left magic, and there was a group of magicians that walked into the restaurant. It was like after one of their big magic club meetings, and they were all going to get dinner together. And I was there with my family, and they were all sitting around fiddling with cards. And I was like, oh, I remember that. I remember what that was like. And so I went over and I said hi, and I did something, and it was all right. It did okay. And they said, whoa, where'd you learn that? I said, oh, I used to be a magician. And the guy looks me dead in the eyes. He's like, used to be? No one used to be a magician. It's like in you still, clearly, it's still there. And that it never occurred to me that it was something that would always be with me. I always figured it was sort of like, I don't know, like music or something like that, like that you would just set the instrument down and you would walk away and it would be done, right? You would no longer be a musician. But then it occurred to me, like at any point, you could just pick up that instrument again and probably start playing. You would still remember. And it dawned on me that I could walk away from it. It would likely never fully walk away from me, right? I'm a Catholic, right? I'm a Catholic convert. And there's a poem that they talk about called The Hound of Heaven, right? That even if you walked away from God, God would hunt you down. The Hound of Heaven would find you, right? It would always be there, right? Poking at your soul, reminding you of the truth. And that's sort of what happened with magic, right? When I say that the bug never stopped biting, that's what I mean, is that it always sort of kept hounding me, right? It kept like hunting me down, like, oh, the world could be mystical. The world could be whimsical. It could be filled with numinous awe. And it doesn't have to be mundane, right? Something as small as a deck of cards could create an experience for people that would transcend the mundane, the normal. It could make them feel all the same things that they feel when they watch a movie that they know is filled with actors and yet they still cry at the end, right? Or they could feel hope for the main character, right? Everyone's going, Rudy, right? Even though you know everyone's an actor. Somewhere in the back of your brain, you know this is not real, and you watch it and it might as well be. So I'd say that was the first one. There was a second one where I realized that I might actually have something to say about the matter. And that probably happened about a year ago. And that was because I was doing Instagram and I got a whole bunch of followers. And the entire time I felt like a complete imposter, right? Because I wasn't performing in front of people. I was performing in front of a camera, right? And there's a lot of street cred that comes with that because cameras don't blink, right? So if you can fool the camera, you can fool anyone, But I also felt very much like an imposter because I wasn't on the hook for making people feel any of that, right? I could just do whatever I wanted to do. I could just throw cards everywhere. I could make them disappear. I could palm. I could do whatever I wanted. And I wasn't on the hook for the outcome, right? If people liked it, they liked it. If they didn't, they don't hit the like button. And it was a very easy equation. And as a magician, because I've been doing it for so long, there was very much a part of me that felt like you should be on the hook, right? You should have skin in the game. That whatever the outcome is, you should actually have to like feel a sense of failure if you don't pull it off, right? If you flash, if you don't pull off the trick or anything like that. And so for a solid 7 or 8 years, I felt like a complete imposter the entire time because like I don't feel the sting at all, right? Sometimes people will leave terrible comments. Fine, whatever. But that's not the same as like an entire audience going, oh, we saw you.
Where's the Rotten Tomatoes at?
Yeah. Oh, where'd I leave my lettuce? Right. But then someone, and I actually just did a video about this, right? About this war between being a magician and being a sleight of hand artist. And I got a response pretty quickly after that of someone who went, yeah, but sleight of hand is a form of magic, right? Just like card manipulation is a form of magic, right? Everyone knows that it's manipulation. It's in the title, right? There is nothing about it that is necessarily mysterious if you just focus on the explanation. But everyone goes to movies and theaters knowing that everyone on stage or on the screen is an actor. That's not a mystery. And yet they can still create emotion. And so I don't think I did a fair enough case of, you know, sleight of hand artists can be magicians. They don't have to be. It's absolutely possible. Like what I was doing, I still don't consider true magic because, like I said, I don't have skin in the game. But I could. I could do what I do and I could present it in a way that I would have skin in the game. And at that point, I feel like I would have crossed over into magic. And so once I sort of had that realization, that's when I feel like I had like that second turn. Like now magic is something else. Now magic is deeper. Now magic is something that I could explore more of the idea aspect of it without sounding like I'm a blowhard, you know. So yeah, I'd say those 2 points. One is that magic wouldn't leave me alone. Like I could leave it alone all day long and it would still keep tapping on the window going, are we there yet? Are we there yet? And then the other one was feeling like I wasn't actually an imposter. Like the last 30 years gave me something valid to speak about and gave me a point of view that I could look at all of the contributors of magic in a different light with a respect for what they had to offer, whether they were from a previous generation or whether they were, you know, just brand new to it and incredibly talented. Like I could look at them from the lens of all of my experience and actually have something worthwhile to talk about with them.
So thank you so much for being that honest. I mean, like, it's awesome, you know, like knowing other people's experiences. And for example, what about the biggest disappointment? Because I think everyone who is like very involved in the discipline at some point is going to feel like this kind of disappointment that I think all of us has felt, you know. And I don't know if you remember like a huge disappointment in your magic life, or if not, maybe you say no, I didn't have it.
Oh no, I've definitely, it's definitely happened like once, at least twice. I think the first one that was what I don't tell people is that at one point I got to, this was what in the video when I talk about the difference between sleight of hand and magic, I talk about, and I had this experience, you know, I tried to do what I do on Instagram in the real world and it didn't hit nearly as well. That was at a Halloween party that I inadvertently sort of got to be a part of because I had a friend who was supposed to do it and he couldn't go. So I went. And the problem is that it was for two very, very prominent singers at the time, right? It was up in the Hollywood Hills and it was sponsored by this big production company. And they had, you know, agreed to bring these two very, very famous singers in. And I thought, oh, that's really cool. I'll get to do this thing. One problem. One is that I came dressed in the way that I would have normally dressed for any other performance, which is a three-piece suit, you know, black suit, white shirt, no tie. Problem is that the entire wait staff was dressed exactly like I was. So now I look like the waiter who's trying to make his bones. Second problem, they didn't tell me it was a Halloween party. So now I definitely do not look like anything but the wait staff. So two problems. One, every time I go to do something, as I'm doing something, I get someone tapping me on the shoulder going, hey, when you're done with that, my wife needs a water. And so because I'm so nice, I got her the damn water. So that didn't go well. But then the other thing is that I kept trying to do the same stuff that I did on Instagram. I kept trying to go, look how freaking cool this Pharaoh shuffle is. And everyone's like, okay, yeah, you need a girlfriend. Like this wasn't like, it's not as impressive to people. Like when you are super impressed by your own sleight of hand, that's the time to stop and reevaluate because there's a very real chance that no one else is, right? You may have just walked into like a distorted reality. So I was doing all this stuff. It wasn't hitting. I was being treated like a waiter, which would have been fine if I was actually a waiter, but I was in entertainment. And I just got done with that night, and I thought, my God, I'm giving up magic again. I'm done.
Was it before your first kiss?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, seriously, it's like that's only the second time I've been kissed. Yeah, no, but then I had a talk with my wife, and I was like, I never want to do that again. And she was like, okay, so don't do that. Don't agree to do that. Don't agree to do a show where you are not in control of the performance experience, right? You don't do this professionally. You are under zero obligation to do that, right? You did it as a favor for a friend. It didn't go well. Luckily, it made your friend look great because by comparison to you, he looks like a professional. But she was right. She was absolutely right. So every performance that I've given since that day, I'm in complete control of the performance experience. And by extension, I'm in control of the audience experience because they're coming into my world, right? And I'll let them share in the things that I love, but I am under no obligation to bring my world into their world and try to squeeze and fit in the parts that don't fit, right? Like I do table magic really, really well. I do in the hands magic pretty okay, right? Mostly from my experience in restaurant magic. So if you want to see me perform, I'm going to bring you to a table because that's where I've been for the past 10 years. And I can do everything that I want to do there. But if you say, oh, I need you to, show up to my kid's birthday party and you're not going to be able to sit down the entire time and we're going to pay you in cake, I'm going to say no, not because I don't love cake. I love cake, but I don't, the type of magic that I love doing doesn't fit well with kids and is better suited for a seated situation, right? And I have worked it out that my love of magic will be maintained so long as I'm in control of that aspect. And it's not because I don't want to explore the other aspects, it's because I don't want to be forced to explore those other aspects in order to put food on the table. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah, but it's very smart as well, like this choice, because you just know what you're really good at and you're just going at that.
Yeah, right. Right.
But it also gives them the best possible experience, right? Like it's not just for you, it's also for them.
Yeah, I'm not just shooting from the hip, right? I'm not just saying, hey, I hope you're amazed by this, but if you're not, I still am. So good luck,
Yeah, it reminds me the story that Joshua J used to tell about the first time that he performed in the same gala at Juan Tamarios. Because Tamarios has one of the best stage shows for lay people ever. He's been performing this show for more than 30 years, and it's really good. But in this gala, this gala was in a theater. The chairs were like independent chairs, like it wasn't like the seats from a theater. They were chairs, So Joshua says that he was thinking about the repertoire for a long time, and the rest of the magicians as well, because they used to be like specialized on close-up magic, and they were thinking of material for the stage. The last one was Tamarios. And he appeared on the stage, and he said, "Please switch on all the lights." He went to the end of the theater. He puts a table there, and he said, "Please turn around. Let's make a circle around the table." And Joshua said, I was completely shocked. Like he broke all the rules. All these people, are going to remember this because they were looking at there, and then they are turning around and Tamarios performed close-up magic for 400 people or 200 people. I don't remember that. So it's really nice that you said, if you want to see me doing magic, let's go to the table. Or I'm not going to do that, because it happened to me in the past. I felt very frustrated, in some situations. So I knew I could handle this situation very well, but performing in these situations under these conditions didn't make me happy at all. So yeah, thank you for sharing your experience. It's I think that to know there are more people like me.
but you make a really good point, right? Part of that, I think the only reason, because you got to be careful, right? Otherwise, it's going to make it sound like, hey, stay in your lane, right? Which is not the message here. The message is, by all means, go explore different, performance types, explore different styles, explore different arenas, explore different audiences, and then pick one and run with it for a while, right? If you find that you love performing for kids because kids are wonder walking, right? Go for it. Go nuts, right? But if you don't like that style of magic, it's okay. It's not that you have to be well-rounded. That's the nice part, right? That was over here, right? In college, one of the things that they tell you is, right, you need to be a well-rounded graduate, right? Well-rounded. You need to study all these things. And then later in life, you find out that's total bubkiss. They're just trying to get you to take more classes, right? It's like you could read all those books on your own. You do not need a professor telling you that you suck about writing about the book you enjoy. That's not a thing. But the same thing goes for magic, right? If you love cards and you don't love mentalism, you should probably explore mentalism just enough to find out how much you don't love it, right? Like, by all means, study like the basics. And then, because here's the weird part, is that you may find out there's an aspect of it that you really, really enjoy, right? I avoided mentalism completely until I met Pete Turner. And then Pete Turner did stuff with a deck of cards and mentalism that was completely impossible. And I was like, God damn, I should probably study mentalism. But then I don't have to become a mentalist. It's totally possible to go read a few books on it, learn to enjoy it, be able to speak intelligently about it, and not become a professional mentalist. Those are absolutely possible situations. So I think everyone should explore. And then if you don't enjoy something, there are 0 awards being given out for doing the thing that you do not enjoy doing. If you don't have to, if you're just doing it because you want to prove to someone that you can do the thing that you don't enjoy, no one's going to hand you a medal. It's just not going to happen. So go do the thing that you love. And I promise you, it seems like you will keep the love for this much longer if you do it that way, as far as I can tell.
Definitely. And it's a really good point you make, because also, like, if I would look at it, I would much rather sit down with someone at a table that's like really well rounded with a deck of cards than someone that knows a bit of coin magic and a bit of card magic and dabbles a bit into mentalism.
Right. But I used to classify magicians under workers and hobbyists and professionals and psychopaths. like the people who they do one thing and that's the thing that they do, and if you look at them wrong, they're going to kill you. No, but they like.
So watch out, kids.
I thought you were saying like great illusions magicians, with the boxes and the.
Oh yeah, no, those guys too. No, absolutely. Yeah, like when you think to yourself, yes, I want to stab swords into people, I think we should have you evaluate. No, I used to classify people like that, right? I only found out later how reductive that is. Like, for instance, I have a friend, Michael O'Brien, right? And in the back of my brain, when I first met Michael, I used to think, oh, worker, right? He learns the magic that he can perform professionally. And he's very good at it. That's the other thing, is that when he performs, he owns the room, right? And then I got to meet him. And then I got to read his books. And I realized how much further he was thinking about the experience of the audience. And it stopped being worker and became working philosopher, right? David Bonfadini, the Magic Crasher, right? I used to think, oh, gag magician, right? Until I performed along with him up in Anchorage, Alaska. We both got flown out to perform up in Anchorage, Alaska, and he owned the bar, right? And then he and I did the 1-year anniversary for a place that we both loved going to, right? They were having a big party and they wanted a couple of magicians. And so he and I performed it, and I did good. He owned the joint. And I realized, no, not gag magician, premier performer who focuses on making people laugh or feel surprised, right? I only found out how deep people go when I stopped looking at the things that they're known for and sat down with them personally, right? I actually got to see how far they went. and that, you know, well, like you guys said, right? Like the person that you think I am, if you just watch me doing card tricks on Instagram versus the person that you think I am, if you only watched my YouTube, you might think they were two different people.
Well, they're two very big polar opposites as well.
Right. Right. But that's true of nearly every single magician that I've met. Right. There are people who you can tell they're hobbyists, right? They learn a little bit of everything because that's what they enjoy. True. The people that I most learn from are the people who do a little bit of that, but then dive deep, right? It's almost like a tea, right? They're about an inch deep on everything. And then there's a couple things where they go a mile deep. Those people I'll sit with all day long. And what's funny is it's always so surprising to find out who those people are, right? It's always that dude that you'd never expect. It's like, oh my God, you've read every book ever and you understand all of it. I think I'd like to have lunch with you, you know? So that's why people should go to magic conventions though, is because that it brings all of those people together. And then you can always find out who the legit person is because they always end up holding court. Right? They're always like there in a chair surrounded by 30 people. And you're like, son of a bitch, we've lived next to each other for years and I never knew you could do any of this. Let's actually talk like humans, you know?
But I think this holds true for any human being though. Like everyone is much deeper on the surface than they appear to be. And I guess also like it also has to do a bit like with what you said in the case of choosing your strengths. Like maybe these people just realize like, okay, my strength is in being like making people laugh. But at the same time, they realize like, yeah, but I also have this like artsy side to me and this side that wants to dive really deep into magic. So how do I make those two overlap?
Yeah. And I really do think that the first rule that everyone should be taught, like especially when you're dealing with other magicians, is approach with humility. I think that's fair, not because you don't know what you're doing, right? I'm taking the classic definition of humility, which is to acknowledge your actual stance within the actual arrangement of reality, right? Humility is not to think less of yourself, right? Humility is to acknowledge the reality of who you are within the schema of everything, right? And if you do that for everyone else, right? If you approach that with humility and say, okay, these people probably know a number of things that I don't, you'd be amazed what you get out of the conversation, right? Especially like, even if they're younger, right? You might walk up to a 14-year-old kid who's very talented and think, oh, he doesn't go that deep. But what he might possess or what he might lack in knowledge, he probably possesses in enthusiasm or wonder, which at nearly being 40, I have likely lost just a little bit of that. So just being around it might make me go, yeah, magic is freaking great. We should do this a lot, you know? So I don't know. I've been around long enough, especially on social media, where social media it tends to reward like the behavior where you're like calling people out, or it tends to reward behavior where you think I'm the greatest, right? It rewards ego.
Pretty much. But I also wonder like, oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead.
Okay. I also wonder like how you would want to approach something with humility, because something I noticed in myself, you know, was like I started off reading like the Vernon books and the Guy Hollingworth book and the Dorian Ortiz books, and then I thought in the beginning like, oh yeah, I'm the shit, you know, like I can do all these things, I'm the greatest magician alive, and then you get to a point like because you think you know a little bit, you think the box is this high. And then you get to a point where you get like a bit over the box and you realize like the box is like until the moon. And you go like, oh shit.
Yeah. I forget. Oh God, where's the term for that? There's a psychological term for that, right? Where people gain a little bit of knowledge and they assume that they now know everything. And then they get just a little bit further and they find out that they are at the very bottom of a very big mountain.
Like
right?
the Dunning Kruger.
Dunning Kruger effect. Yeah. The Dunning Kruger effect. Yeah. So this is, I mean, it's true of nearly every area of study, right? Except maybe, I don't know, cross stitching. That's the only thing I can think where that doesn't apply. But or making mac and cheese. It's super easy. Just open the box, throw it in.
Or maybe
the water.
You just haven't learned enough about cross stitching, Jeremy.
Yeah, right. But that's the thing. Yeah. And then you watch somebody, you know, who actually knows what they're doing and it's a completely different thing. No, but I think that's true. And if you assume that you were always on the first part of that journey, I feel like those people are always smarter than me. The people who assume that they are always still just beginning the process, they're 100% always smarter than me. I always want to sit down with them. I always want to take lessons with them because they're still learning. They're still testing out the hard edges of everything that they know. And as a result, the things that they do know, they know for certain because they tested it, right? They found out the hard edges of everything. And now what they know they can stand on with certainty, right? And so can you, if you're willing to invest in it. And that's the other thing, is that if you're willing to learn from them, they've been doing the same thing for the past 30 years, exploring it, testing it, and all that. And you could sit down for an hour and pick their brain for what, $100, $200? I don't know. Take them to a fancy lunch and they might do it all. Do that. Just do that. That's an amazing opportunity because now you're getting 30 years of experience compressed into an hour, right? So take lessons. That's the other thing you should take from this, is take lessons whenever possible. There you go.
Yeah. There's another thing, you know, like that we could add here. Like one of my mentors, he was a Pepe Carroll's student, like occasional student, and I learned studying with him the real meaning of the word versatile, or the concept being versatile. You know, because sometimes we think like being versatile is like a person who is versatile is a person who fits in any occasion, any kind of magic and everything. But my mentor used to tell me, like, try to master a branch of magic, study the rest of them, compare the knowledge that you have in the branch that you have mastered with the rest of the branches, and you're going to realize that you have a very long way to get the same thing. But the knowledge that you have learned, you know, and acquired in the branch that you have mastered is going to help you to be a better magician in the rest of the branches. And for me, it was amazing because from that moment, I was pretty young. I think I was 12 or something like that. I realized that when I'm with a coin magician, maybe because everyone, you know, is like, yeah, I've studied a lot, maybe I can fool him, whatever. But comparing, I'm specialized in cards, you know, but comparing my knowledge in cards and in coins made me feel like very relaxed when I talk to another magician, you know, to other magician about coins or about a different branch, even with cards. Because if the other person is very good at, I don't know, gambling, and I like, you know, doing like deals or whatever, but this is not my specialty, it makes me feel like very calm and relaxed and try to see everything with perspective. So it's really nice that you have talked about this, because I think it's real. And today I think like it's very difficult to have like the same relationship with mentors, you know, that because in the past, Diverno, oh, the professor, Ascanio, oh, el maestro, you know, Marlo, oh yeah, and today is like, yeah, look at this guy, he's on Instagram, yeah. Oh,
yeah, no, but that's the other, yeah, you get you definitely get a lot more street cred than like based on strictly on the follower count, right? And they may have, it's like a weird authority bias, right? Like people assume that because there are a number of people who follow you, you must know what you're talking about. And that may have nothing to do with reality. Like there's, you know, I got a lot of people calling me a mechanic, right? That I was a card mechanic. But in my mind, I have a completely different definition for what a card mechanic looks like, right? I've sat with a couple of them, and it's a completely different skill set than what I do, right? What I do is very flashy. It's very visual and everything. Card mechanics, it's invisible, right? It's the exact opposite of what I'm doing, right? But because I had this massive follower count, they're like, oh yeah, he's the best card mechanic on Instagram. And that was, you know, that had nothing to do with reality.
And that paradoxically makes you the worst card mechanic in the world.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I'm looking at like, oh, it's only making me worse, right? But yeah, I think also the way that we learn, the way that we figure out who to listen to, the voices that we listen to, it is harder to find a clear voice because there are so many people talking, right? If social media did anything, it gave everyone a microphone, right? Not only that, it told everyone you need to start talking to be important. So we all do, right? So we all post and we all do things, and it has two effects, right? One, it makes it very loud and noisy sometimes, right? Because everyone is being told that you need to post and you need to tell everyone, hey, look at me, right? But the other thing is that because it does that, it also causes a couple of people who should be seen to be seen, right?
Yeah.
They would otherwise just be hidden away. They would just, they would be one more face in a crowd, as opposed to, the savant that they are, right? You find out, you see what they're capable of because someone gave them a mic, right? And that part is fascinating. That's honestly why I stick around, right? Because social media can be exhausting. It just can, right? It takes a lot of energy to do this perpetually, to constantly generate this, but to interact with it. And every once in a while, you find someone who has just been waiting in the wings. And then you find out, oh my God, these people, like, they know their stuff. They're fascinating, right? Not only that, you can reach out to them. You could talk to them. You could interact with them. Perfect example, right? Andrew Frost, right? Andrew Frost used to be Charlie Acut. He and I interacted just a little bit on Instagram, and then we met each other at Blackpool. I was like, Charlie Acut? He's like, Los Angeles? And then did we just become best friends? But then he transitions into who he is now, right? He is one of the best card handlers walking the planet. He is just exceptional at what he does. And the world would likely never know it were it not for the fact that he was willing to go on social media and put that on display. There would be there wouldn't be enough conventions for me to attend to find out who he was without that, right? So from that aspect, yes, social media does have a lot of things that make it very hard to, appreciate that sort of classic relationship with Magic, right? That whole mentor-mentee thing, right? That slower build, right? The way that you had to earn your way to sit with the teacher and everything. It does take away from that, right? But it does have the exact opposite effect of bringing people to the forefront who would otherwise remain in the background. And that, I think, it's okay to pay that price to watch that happen, right? Because I'll take lessons with the masters all day long, but I'll also get to reach out to those guys and take lessons with them, right? Nearly everybody I've interviewed, I took lessons from ahead of time, right? I'll make them the offer, right? I'll pay for lessons if you'll give me an interview, right? And that has been incredibly invigorating because, again, you find out just how deep these people go. I thought Perseus, when I first met him, right? I thought Perseus Archimanes was the guy who released a couple of things on Illusionist.
Yeah.
Right? I was like, oh, okay, we both have done this thing. We are equals, right? We both have released things on Instagram or on Illusionist. And then I got to talk to him. And I was like, nope, we are not equals. I will sit down. I will grab a notebook. You just talk and I'll just sit here and write things, right? That would not have happened if it wasn't for social media. So even though social media feeds this ego thing, makes it very easy to get full of yourself, if you can quiet your own voice for just a little bit and look around, you might see some people who are incredible. And then it gives you the opportunity to get to know them personally before they're blown up and completely unreachable and, 15 million followers on YouTube or whatever.
It's also interesting with the social media, like sort of like the shift you also made. Like you started out with Magic, right? And then you were like, I guess, into Magic. And then you got into social media and you became more like what would be considered like sleight of hand artist, I would say.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, and then at one point I guess you sort of realized, like, but when you started performing that gig you were talking about, but there's more to this, and I never want to do it like this again. Like, this is not Magic, I suppose. And then you're searching for a deeper meaning into Magic again.
Yeah, I'm not kidding. I walked backwards into that, right? I walked backwards into sort of shedding the things that made Magic Magic, because I was getting so much credit for just being able to handle a deck of cards in a cool fashion, right? Now, lapping can be used for magic, right? Palming, transfers, all of that can be used for magical effects. But if you remove them from the context of that, now it's a performance art unto itself. It falls into, in my mind, the same category as card manipulation, right? And
which is an art to its on its own. There's no problem with it.
Yeah, it's not that that's a problem. And that's the thing. If it's on purpose, it's not a problem. If you do it on accident, which I did for a solid 8 years, now it's a bit of a problem. So I think testing it in front of other people, I found out that I had a performance in front of a group of kids who were like, they were a lacrosse team, right? And I just sat down and I said to myself, this may go horribly, right? But I'm going to do the thing that I actually love doing, right? The routines that I am actually interested in learning, the lessons that I've taken, I'm going to do that, right? I'm not going to do the things I do on Instagram, even if they asked me to do it. I'm going to do the thing that I actually enjoy doing. So I just started talking about history, right? I started talking about Di Vernon and Harry Houdini, right? And the fact that they started off friends and then didn't. And I started talking about Ambitious Card. And then I sort of explained like the history of it. And I started doing it. And what's funny is it came out great, right? It actually worked out really well. And then I started doing a gambling routine. And I just talked about why it was that I enjoyed this stuff, right? Why I was hunting for all of these people, why these like old school card mechanics fascinated me. And what's funny is it sort of fascinated them too. Like I got them to be interested in those people, not me. And the only reason that I was interesting is because I could demonstrate why these people were interested.
Show them what you're interested in.
Yeah, right. Except I took myself out of the equation, right? I removed myself. Like I'm not the card mechanic. I know enough card mechanics and enough about card mechanics to be able to do some of the things that card mechanics do. And this is why you should find them interesting too. And it worked. Oh my God, it was great. Like it was one of the best performances I'd ever given. And I couldn't get enough of that. And so that was sort of why I kicked off the YouTube, was because I realized I could do that. That's something I could do for the rest of my life. Right? If the only thing that I did was get to jam with a bunch of really bitchin' people and show the world why I think they're fascinating, I'd be done. I could do that the rest of my life. I could retire and just do that. And that has now become sort of my performance style, is I'll show the world why magic is fascinating, but I'll do it in a way that gives them an appreciation for all those giants whose shoulders I'm standing on. I can tell their story, and I can use magic to show them why people like me would spend our lives fiddling with these. That I could do. So that's what I do.
Which is beautiful, because it's an authentic thing you're doing.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
It's really nice. There's a saying in Spanish. I'm going to try to translate it in the best way possible. I don't know if it's going to be understandable. Sorry. It's something like, it says something like, don't kiss anyone if you're not going to be strong enough to stand the absence or the company of this person, you know? So it's actually means like, if we apply this to magic, you know, I remember I usually spend and recognize a lot of hours because of my conception, my mentors and everything, thinking of how to convey something else through magic with the gestures, the symbols and everything. And then in many conventions, people say, hey, you're the guy who performs reset, you know, like you're this color change or this palm, this technique. And it's like, for me, it's like very vulgar to talk about techniques and secrets. I don't care about that, you know, because I've studied this in the past and there's something else. But they talk to me because of that palm, that's past this. It's like, shit, man. And at the beginning, I didn't know how to stand it, you know, but, you know, like day by day, year by year, I've understood why. And actually, we don't really have like control on other people's opinions about us. Yeah, it's like, I don't know, like James Blunt, the singer, for example, he published like, you're beautiful. and he says like, my life changed because I published a 3.5 minute song, and that's the only song that people want to listen. So I can't really do like more music because people are going to ask me, please, can you sing You Beautiful? It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, right. Well, and that, yeah, it's sort of that thing that I was telling you about, right? When you're having to do the same thing over again, because it's the thing that you're known for doing, but it's not the thing that you're currently interested in.
Yeah.
You know, it's like yeah, that's why I think one-hit wonders are so common, is because they have this song that gets massive acclaim, and then they're stuck doing that same thing, right? Which to me sounds like hell. That sounds like a very, very special version of hell, right? Where this thing that you love doing, you find a way to do it really well, and then you get known for that. And then that's the only thing you're ever known for. But you still have all these things. And not only that, you feel like you've got that in you to express it, but no one wants to give you the mic except for that thing that you did before. Yeah, that sounds like it would drive a person mad. But the other thing, you know, Mandy Patinkin, I think is his name, from Princess Bride, right? The Inigo Montoya, You Killed My Father.
Yeah.
It drove him nuts because everyone wanted him to do that line, right? It drove him crazy. And then like later in life, he realized how many people were seeing that for the first time. How many people remembered that from their childhood, and that he was the new anti-hero. He was flawed, right? He didn't have a plan, and yet somehow he still was able to avenge his father, right? It took him forever to finally like get to that point. And then he became a much kinder person to all of those people because he could see it from their point of view. All the people who are asking you to do that, Paul, all the people who want me to lap things, right? Like I became the guy who basically threw things at my crotch while seated. That was like my entire magic career. And people wanted me to do that live. And I didn't want to do it live until I realized like that to them, that was something cool. That was new. That was interesting. And then we could have a conversation about it. And then I could get to know them, right? How many people have come up to you asking you about the poem, about Reset, and you actually end up having a conversation with them. And then you can show them this whole broad world of everything that you studied. And then they learn more about you, but you also find out that they have all these other interests. Like for me, that's the beautiful part. Like, yeah, it sucks constantly being associated with a thing that you may not be interested in anymore. But if it is an introduction to either an interesting person or the ability to express all the other things that you still love and care about, I feel like it's okay, right? I feel like you'll live, right? It's tough and it sucks, right? I guess I'll throw a coin at my crotch while seated again, right? Like, all right, that's all right. But it starts the conversation. It starts it in a way that now I can show them all the people that I learned from. I could introduce them to Babel. I could show them Slidini, right? I could show them all these people that the world doesn't know about or has forgotten that I still remember very clearly. And I have zero problem talking about it, right? I always, I get interviewed every once in a while. And when I do, I always talk about this, right? That for me, presenting magic to the outside world, especially on social media, comes in 5 flavors, right? That the first flavor is exposure, right? Giving the secret away for free because it gets you acclaim. And the only reason why I don't like that is not because I think exposure is bad in and of itself. It's because it's cheap. It's because it's easy and it doesn't last, right? Well, it's like pornography. Pornography is not intimacy. They're different things, right? So exposure for me is like the pornography of magic, right? You're just giving away the secret with zero intimacy. And then the next one is explanation. And that's where you at least try to add context. And this happens a lot whenever, whenever psychologists talk about how magicians use secrets to fool people, right? They're explaining a concept. They might even be exposing it, but they're at least trying to add context. And then there's education. And education means that you're at least invested enough that you want the person watching it to be able to do what you're telling them, right? You want them to be able to repeat the process. And that is at least one step further, right? Because you're not just giving the secret away. You're not just explaining it. You are investing a piece of yourself into them so that they can then carry forward what it is you're passing along. And that would be great. And that's where most people stop. But the next level is edification, right? Edification is where you build up everyone who has contributed to what you are now passing on, right? You give not only context for performance, but you give context as far as history, as far as biography. You give people a chance to appreciate everyone that came before them. And then they might understand what it is that they have to offer the people that come after them, right? And then the final one is elevation. And that's where magic speaks to something outside of itself, or something outside of magic speaks to it, right? Where both grow. And that's hard. Very rarely do I think that will happen through social media. That takes normally a show. That takes Juan Tamarios walking into the audience. That takes Helder taking over a theater during COVID. That takes Derek Delgadio doing In and of Itself anywhere in the world, right? Where it now gets elevated to somewhere that it wasn't before, right? Where everyone had these conceptions about what magic is, and then magic becomes something else, right? Or something that had nothing to do with magic now has a piece of the whimsical because a magician had something to say about it. So that, I think, is what we could shoot for.
Had you had any of those experiences to a screen?
Pardon?
Have you had any of those experiences through a screen? So
I would say, yeah, honestly, I didn't think it was possible, but I watched Helder take over the Geffen Playhouse, right? When he did his shows, The Present and the Future, and COVID was hard, right? It shut down the world, shut down everywhere. And everyone was talking about, oh, magic as a performance art is dead until the world opens up. And then all of a sudden it wasn't, right? All of a sudden we saw these people who were creating entire shows that you could only access through this. Right?
Yeah.
And you knew that the only thing that they were doing was this, right? It was a camera pointed at them. And I thought, there's no way that you could like turn magic that normally happens in person into the same experience. And then Helder sent me a package, and then I got to do it with him. And then we're doing this stuff, and I'm watching him do stuff that still is impossible. And he's making me care. And that for me was the difference, right? It wasn't, oh, I just watch a cool trick, because I watch cool tricks online all day long. But he made me give a damn. He made me all of a sudden experience things in my house with my wife, right? She made cookies. We got dressed up. We're watching a Zoom call on a big screen, and he's making me give a damn about the magic that he's doing. That was a game changer. Because before, I didn't think that was possible. It took an entire investment of, in my mind, one of the greatest performers we've got of his generation, plus the backing of a theater that was willing to bank on it to pull it off, right? But he was the first. And then I watched Will Houston do the exact same thing when he talked about the history of magic and how technology has grown and how magic could be preserved through it and could thrive within it, right? And then I watched Andrei Pshinishka do the exact same thing, except build on the shoulders of both. And then he had his own show, right? Magnolia, where he used technology in a way that it became magic. Technology stopped being the explanation, and it became almost a victim of magic, right? Like it fell by the wayside, like, son of a bitch, no, I'm not the explanation, right? And now he's doing it in a way that, again, I cared. I gave a damn. I was laughing. I was like he did that thing where he broke reality for a second. I thought I had him. Turned out he was 52 steps ahead of me. Yeah, I've definitely seen it through a screen.
Nice. And has anything through a screen ever made you cry? Like magic-wise?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Watch Hulu. Well, go on Hulu and watch In and of Itself. If you're not crying at the end, you have no heart. There is no heart in you.
I agree.
I really, that changed me. And I was, I was dealing with two toddlers, so I was running around trying to watch it on my phone, and it was still staccato, right? It was still broken up. I was trying to fit in pieces, and it got to the end, and I'm not going to spoil anything by saying this. He gets to the point, and you guys probably remember this at the end, where he goes, and I am the ruletista, and I broke. I was like, you silly son of a bitch, you are the ruletista. And I was done. I even sent him a message. I was like, I didn't think he'd actually read it, but I sent him a message. I was like, damn it, you did it. You got there before everyone else. Right.
It's really nice, because I've talked to many people about this, and the reactions are very similar. You know, like, you're crying, and at the same time you're saying like, son of a bitch.
You really are. Yeah. You're like, yeah. But honestly, just, that moment where, and this is why I think it was such a game changer, is because you watch people in the audience being seen in a way that they likely haven't been in a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When you can make David Blaine cry, that's rough, right?
It's game over, man.
Like you watch,
I'm Bill Gates.
When you watch Bill Gates sit down like a student, like being told to sit down by a teacher, you know you've got something special there. But again, I think that was a very, very special thing, right? Because I've watched other people try to do something similar, right? Where they try to infuse meaning in a way that it feels forced. That was the thing about In and of Itself, is that you got through this. You knew it was very well choreographed. Anyone who's doing something on that level, there is choreography there, but you forget about it. You just think it's a dude talking about his life, right? And it elevated it, and it did both things, right? It built up theater in a way that theater hadn't seen in generations, right? And theater spoke to magic in a way that, Ricky Jay, maybe before that, 52 assistants. And even then, I didn't feel like crying with 52 assistants. I laughed, I clapped, I studied that thing so much that if Ricky Jay ever felt sick, he could just call me up and I'd do the show. But when Derek got done with his show, I thought, no one's going to top that. No one's going to do his show for him. That took Helder doing that show. Or not Helder. That took, why can't I remember his name? Derek. That took Derek doing that show, right? When I saw, I know, right? No, but like when I saw Helder's show, right? Because that's the thing. There's this war between them, and I really don't think there should be. When I saw Helder's show, I got done with that show, and I thought, that's a Helder show. There's no one that's going to do it like Helder does, because Helder tells stories in a way that is absolutely Helder, and you want to stick around for it, right? And that was probably the distinction that I learned, right? Watching the guys who could do it through the screen, it was their show. It was absolutely their show. No one was going to replace them or tell the story for them. It was their story. So, even if some bald dude on Instagram screws up their name, it's still their story. Yeah.
You don't have the word of God, Jeremy?
Yeah, right. Seriously. No,
you're called Helder now, Derek.
This is the thing. This is the one part about Instagram that no one realizes when you've got a huge following, is that I get to cut out all the parts where I goof up. So everyone thinks that I do this perfectly. I just delete those things, So,
I don't know about Derek, but Helder really appreciates like the knowledge and the work that Derek does, because I mean, like I can say like Helder and I are best friends, but we are, I don't know, like not very, very close, but we have met like sometimes. And we have talked about many, many things. And when he remembers about the time that he was performing with Derek, he always talks about this from a very respectful point, he really appreciates like Derek's work.
I really do think I think their partnership, like it blossomed to, I don't know that they would ever perform again, right? But I really do think that experience caused both of them to thrive despite the conflict. It built two incredible performers up in completely different ways, right?
Yeah.
They tell stories in a very different fashion, but both of them tell stories in a way that makes you shut up and listen. And they're both very gifted performers. They both work incredibly well with the same team that's generating those type of shows. But I also do think that they're very, very much individually very, very gifted, and they have both worked on their craft in a way that very few people have followed, right? That very few people could follow in their footsteps and generate a similar show, right? That would generate the same thing. because it took both those people and their life experiences. You know, you read A Moral Man and you find out how hard Derek had to fight to get to where he's at, right? I don't know enough, short of what Helder has told me about his past. I don't know enough to speak to that, but I know that you don't get to where Helder's at without an incredible breadth of experience, right? You find his book, right? Like his last book, that thick. You don't write a book that thick unless you've got something to say, right? So anyway, all right, I'll stop rambling about that. Sorry.
Ramble as much as you want.
Yeah, it's very nice. I only want to say one thing. Like when I was watching like Derek's show, like in the last moment, of course I was crying and swearing, you know. But I have like a Katy Perry's moment, you know. It was like I kissed a girl and I like it. It was like I didn't expect it, but oh my god, it's nice.
Yeah. You find out that you're into it. Yeah, that's yeah. It's a very awakening experience. Yeah. You know, I'm sure he'd love to hear that from me. Yeah, Derek, you awakened this part of me. But it does, right? It did to so many people, right? So many people were like, oh, this is just a show that everyone's talking about. No one walked out thinking they were going to grab a card off a wall and then walk away, probably holding on to that card for the rest of their lives because they were, right? Like that's a different thing. Yeah.
Because the thing is, I was doing like my show. It was like stand-up magic and storytelling, and I was pushing myself and saying myself like, you should do like less magic, but stronger magic, you know. And instead of 7 pieces of magic, maybe 4 or 5, but they should be, you know, calmer and stronger, I like that. But I wasn't confident enough, you know. And then I watched Derek's show, and it was like, yeah, I kissed a girl and I like it. It was literally that, you know.
Yeah, that's the way it was. Honestly, that was when, because I've never seen Derek live. I've seen Helder live. Right? What are we talking? Twice? I think I've seen him twice. And I remember the way he structured his show. It was the first time I'd ever seen anyone put the audience on the line, right? Because there's a version of his show, right, where he gives someone the opportunity, if they want, to view all of the secrets of the show. And usually it's the person who was the most pain in the ass during the entire thing, where he gives them the chance, right? He'll hand them a key and they can view the notebook that has all of the secrets. They can't take pictures, they can't take it home. But if it is that important to them, they could either keep the key or they could use the key to look at the secrets, right? And I watched a lady try to give the key back, right? Like she was like, I don't know what to do with this. Like it's too heavy, right? The show was so well structured that at the end, she couldn't bear the weight of this key. I thought, my God, I could stay up all night and not think of a show like that, you know? So like from that aspect, watching that live, that was a game changer. And then again, I got to watch him handle COVID in a way that no one else had. No one else was doing that. Everyone got a camera and everyone figured out that you need to have good lighting and you need to have something to say and probably need someone managing the camera so you're not having to bother with it. But making it matter within someone's living room while they're going through one of the toughest things the world has gone through in the past couple decades, that was Helder. Helder gets to take credit for that one. So, yeah, anyway. Which
is something interesting. Like if you look at Helder and Derek, and most good performers, I think, are good performers. Like just a sidetrack, but like the last time I cried for magic was I was watching Penn and Teller Fullest, and I saw Shutogawa do the Neo purse, and I was just like, oh, that's just how it should look like, you know, like.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So someone does something at the level. Yeah. When they go God mode in a way that you haven't been able to appreciate for a while. Yeah. I get that. I'm with you. I get that.
But maybe you cried because you felt like humiliated.
Yeah,
like
maybe,
me, you know, like...
maybe I'm just a bitch, you know? Who knows?
Yeah.
You went to the shower.
Maybe
like,
you just cry a lot. Maybe that's, yeah.
Maybe I should check that out.
Maybe I'm just a crier. Maybe I'm just, I'm just emotional. I do that with everyone. Like, show me a business card, and I'll be like, it's beautiful.
Damn, man, Derek awakened this part of me.
Yeah, right. Yeah, seriously. Yeah. You made me a crier, Derek. This is just getting, this poor bastard. He's gonna hear this like at some point. He's like, God, what a bunch of creeps.
But the point I wanted to make anyway was like they're all very authentic, right? So all of them, when you look at them, it's not like you press a button and then the magician starts to talk and there comes the script out of the robot. But it's like it's very much them performing, which I was also talking with Victor Pina about this a few days ago, and he's also like pretty good at it. It's like, Victor, how do you do that? And he was like, well, Rico, he was talking with, I can't remember the name of the guy, but someone that won Britain Got Talent, like a magician. He was performing with in this magic house in Spain. And he was like, he was doing the same show like 4 times a day or something. And I was like, how do you keep it interesting? He was like, yeah, but they're seeing it for the first time. And you can draw so much excitement out of it. You can show someone something you love so much for the first time and just see what that does.
It's fair. I mean... Yeah. I think, and that's sort of the problem, especially being on the inside, right? Like we are so exposed and sometimes overexposed to magic that we forget what it's like to be in awe of it until we watch someone who is really obviously on a completely different level, right? Like Victor for me is one of those people, right? I watch him do it all the time. And putting yourself back in that, right? I think that's honestly, having kids probably was one of the things that changed that for me, because you realize what it's like for a human being to experience the first time of something every single day, right? For the first 5 years of their life, everything is brand new and they're having to figure it out from scratch. So everything is wonder. Trees are wonderful. Wind is something completely new. Rain is mystical. It is magic water falling from the sky. Some people have never experienced magic at a deep level. And when they do, even if you've done that show 100 times, you see the look in their eye and it is a child experiencing rain for the first time, right? And if you could acknowledge that, if you could honor that, I feel like magic would be better for it. Right? If you could just be like, it's like poor David Copperfield going, fucking floating car, like, you never want to be bored with being amazing, right? How sad would that be? Like, yeah, I can fly, like,
You made me laugh about Copperfield. I was imagining him with a rose. Come on, bitch, just fly. I'm going to pose.
Yeah. Like you could tell he's probably like stuck in a box in chains, and he's probably ordering something on eBay.
Fly for me, come on, fly for me.
Like I know that's the thing. I think that's probably the hardest part, is maintaining the mystery, maintaining the numinous, right? That word has followed me around forever because of C.S. Lewis, right? And I got to imagine that it gets very difficult, right? Especially when you've been in it for so long, right? I've been at this for 30 years, give or take, right? And the only way that I'm able to keep the mystery is by being a kid, right? Especially around people like go hang out with Garrett Thomas for 30 minutes and you'll be a kid again, right? Go watch Mike Peixoto up at the Magic Castle and you'll be a kid again, because they will fry you in a way that isn't just like, oh my God, what exceptional handling you have, Garrett Thomas. It's more like, oh, you broke physics, right? That's a problem, right? Like those people, it helps to have that. But then, like you said, right, the audience is experiencing it for the first time. So if you can't hang around people who are doing that to you, learning to appreciate that you could do that for someone else, I think, yeah, that if you could find a way to hold on to that, if you could find a way to do that for someone on purpose, like pick a person in the audience, and this is the person who you're going to give them the experience to remember, right? You're going to show them what it's like to kiss a girl and like it, right? Like, you could do that. I feel like you'd be okay. I feel like you could keep doing it for the rest of your life and you'd be fine.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. We here in Spain have a theory about this, about doing the thing for the first time. There is a kind of theater called, I don't know how to translate it, but in Spanish, the literal translation would be something like the comedy of the art, or the art comedy, or something like that. And it is based on having an action, and then you have to find how to improve this action and how to finish this primitive idea by improvising. So, for example, you know what to do and how to do it, but you don't know what is in the middle. Like you have to find a selected card, and like the main idea, and you have to talk to them about controlling cards, but you don't really know like the script or the timing or anything else. So you go in front of the audience and you have to discover how to do it and what's the best way to do it. That's something that we really study and practice in Spain, about discovering, the best way to convey this and to discover like the way to do it. It helps a lot.
Dude,
if you haven't trained,
I'm not kidding. Yeah, like the boys in Spain changed me, and everyone says that, but I don't think everyone hears the like reason. Like Tony Chang sat with Gabby and he was a different man, right?
Yeah.
I got to know a few people from the Spanish style, right? From the Spanish school. And the same thing, right? Like the way you guys think about improv, right? Like what you're talking about, that jazz style where you don't know what's coming necessarily. You've got what you have, and you have to invest whatever you have into whatever comes your way, and to study that and to make an art form of the unexpected. I don't know how you do that. I don't even know how you wake up in the morning and think, yeah, we should do that, right? But you did. That was a thing that happened, right? And then you wrote books about it, so idiots like me could read about it. But it changed me because I didn't think people could think about magic in the way that you guys do, right? I always figured magic for me was very process oriented, right? It was very much like you see a routine, right? Or the routine is described. Here's how to execute the routine. Here's what to say during the routine as you're executing the routine. And this is the expected outcome. And at that point, everyone should go, right? And then you hang out with a couple of boys from Madrid and you find out, oh no, there's a whole other like layer and level, right? Like in the States, the magic theory that we have is very much about categories. Right? It's very much about giving names to concepts and then manipulating those concepts in a way that the equation comes out well, right? That all the symbols on one end equal the number you were trying to get to at the end. And it is very much about process and categories, and it is very, very scientific. Whereas the boys from Madrid, right, the Spanish school, there's so much more heart. Right? There's so much more of the person, and not just psychology, right? Because we've got that too. It's more about empathy. It was the first time that I watched empathy be used as an equation in magic, or as part of the equation in magic, right? Integrating the human aspect, the human experience, right? That people are amazed for a number of different reasons, and they may have nothing to do with how talented you are. Right? And that you could structure your magic in a way that could take that into account. Done. All right. I'll start from scratch just for you guys. I'll just be a beginner just to watch that happen again.
Thank you about this comment on Spanish magic. I think Tamarios was like someone very important in this thing, because everyone wanted to be Juan Tamarios, you know, but no one wanted to wear jeans on the stage. Everyone wanted to be him, but no one wanted to be as ugly as he says he is.
Right.
His handling isn't like the best ever because there are like smoother sleight of hands, and like Pepe Carroll was better, Scani was better in the handling, not in the or many others, you know. But everyone wanted to be Juan. So at the same time, it pushed Spanish magicians to find their own path, but at the same time having a good reference. That's something that actually you have in the States with Vernon, for example. You know?
Yeah,
he was a great magician, but he wasn't a performer. And at the same time, it was like, wow, he was like the best one, you know?
Right. Yeah, like he would hold court, right? And he was acknowledged as one of the paramount thinkers because he was, right? There's no denying. Now, I am in terms of like what I do, I'm probably more Marlowe than Vernon, but it is very, very much the credit is earned, but not in the way that I think people expect. Right? Like, especially when you become a paragon at that level, right? I've watched a lot of people try to imitate Juan, but the ones who end up making it, I feel like you can tell they're his kids, but they play their own music, right? Like they definitely do their own thing. You can tell where they came from, but where they're going is somewhere completely different. They're not trying to circle one, right? They're off doing their own thing. You just know the road that they took started with one, right? It's like all the disciples and all the best friends of Gabby. You can tell where Gabby had the influence, right? Yeah. You can feel it. It's palpable. But you can also see that those guys took what they got invested from Gabby and ran with it in various directions that have nothing to do with what Gabby was doing, right? Yeah. It's one of the reasons why I like talking to Victor so much is because Victor reminds me so much of Gabby. I never got to sit with Gabby. That was always on my bucket list. And then he passed away before I could do it. And then Victor gave me a piece of Gabby, right? And then he showed me what he was doing. And I was like, oh God, I need a piece of Victor, right? Girl, and I liked it, right? You brought that up. We're going to keep doing that. I do think it's fascinating though, because that's what I mean is like, you see these people and they become a window to all of the people that came before them. And yet they themselves are something worth watching, right? They're not just worth looking through into everything that they were invested in or everything that invested in them. They themselves are something worth watching. And once you find those people, stay a while. My God, I got to hang with Woody Aragon. And that was a game changer, right? I got to hang with a couple of people who, Shane Cobalt, right? It's a game changer. You see these people who they know their craft well. You know that people invested in them, but they are not carbon copies of their teachers. They are themselves. Those people, I think they don't get enough credit. I think the world is too noisy for them to get the credit that they deserve today. And they may eventually get that credit, and I'll work as best I can to try to give them that credit. But yeah, they need more credit. They just
Which is also a thing with social media, right? Like not all those personalities flourish through social media.
Yeah, true. I've talked about this with other people. Social media has a lot of false flags, right? You'll get notoriety for a thing that you never expected to do, or maybe never even wanted to do. And then you feel obligated to do it because that's the thing that gets you the attention. So you can point at the thing that you care about, right? And that can be a very hard truth. It is the truth. And if you can acknowledge it and if you can play with it, it makes it a lot easier. If you take it too seriously, it will drive you insane, right?
But that's the same with magic, though. I feel like if you take magic too serious, it will drive you nuts, man.
That's true. Yeah, because you watch people enter a reality distortion field, right? Where it becomes so important that anyone or anything that deviates from what you have come to find as the truth for you, you become, a bitter old man about it. It's super easy to do, right? Especially if you love it, especially if you care about it, right? If you take the thing that you love and you try to hold on to it and you try to not let it grow, eventually it will come to resent you and you it. And that's true of everything, right? But magic, if you try to hold on to magic and not let it change, I got into an argument with Max Maven over like magic on the screen, right? Magic on social media. And I got into a whole argument with him, not because I don't respect Max Maven, but more because I don't respect the idea that magic should never transition onto the screen, because the whole world is. It's happened. It's a foregone conclusion. We're here, right? The fact that we're doing this is proof that magic has transitioned into digital media, right? So that argument is already done. Anyone who argues that it shouldn't is stuck in the past because it's here, right? Now, how it should be maintained, we're still finding out, right? How magic should be performed and maintained, and what is considered good and what is considered bad, we're still in the process of figuring out, because we just got the internet, right? We're still figuring out the consequences of that. But there are a few people who I think are leading the way, who are giving us examples of what it means to do this in a way that builds magic up. It doesn't cheapen it. It doesn't dilute it. It doesn't restrict it. And there are a few people out there that if we could follow their example, I feel like magic would inherently be better for it, right? I spoke with Will Houston, right? And when he talks about, right, the first magic books that actually had an effect on the world, those authors were treated as scum, right? One of the authors was, Professor Hoffman, right? Modern Magic. The first magic book to really have an effect on the general population, right? They told him, right? The reviewers said it would have been better if Professor Hoffman had died in the womb, right?
Whoa.
Yeah, so if that's a little rough, so you get some of these nasty comments of like, magic shouldn't ever be on the screen. It should never be revealed. It should never be, all of these rules that we've held on to, which I've held on to for years, constantly get broken every single day. And yet magic is no less, right? There aren't people who are giving up magic because they saw magic on social media. In fact, it's usually the opposite. They pick up a deck of cards because they want to be that cool. And then they find out how deep the rabbit hole goes, right? The Dunning Kruger effect takes over. Oh, I got a couple of tutorials from Illusionist, and now I'm a master magician. And then they read a book from Perseus and find out, no, it's going to take a while, right? I think that happens a lot more thanks to social media, right? But it is very hard to maintain the good. It just is. Right? It is difficult because it is so easy to veer off. All the false flags, all the things that you could be rewarded for very easily, right? You could gain 1 million followers in a year if you'll just reveal every single effect that has ever happened on America's Got Talent. It's not that hard, right? Take the recording, analyze it, show people, oh, he's got a dove in his pocket, right? People go, oh yeah, he does. I'll hit follow to learn more.
Oh no, poor dove.
Yeah, right. So yeah, how long has that little guy been in there? Or you could take the slow road, right? You could talk to people. You could show them how to care about it. And not as many people will hit follow. Not as many people will hit subscribe. And that's okay. You should learn to be okay with that, right? That, I think, for me, honestly, if we were setting up an ethic for magic, especially here in social media, I think it's okay to say that it's better that magic grows slowly that way.
But I think that the debate, I think is on the question about having or not having spectators in the same room with the magician. Because, for example, if you compare Derek's show when but not the live, like in for example, now it's in Disney or in Hulu or whatever, and Helder's, there's a huge difference. For example, Darren Brown's shows are very watchable on your screen because they were recorded in a theater with an audience. So I think the debate is on how to do it, in a proper way without having the audience in the same room than the magician. Don't you think so?
That's fair. I think, but again, we're still very much in the infancy of that.
Of course.
Right. And for instance, is magic still magic if you're doing it for yourself? I think that's first and foremost the first question. If you were alone on an island with a deck of cards and just fiddling around, is it still magic? Right? Some would say yes, some would say no. I used to say no. I used to say, no, that's just practice. Until you're doing it for someone else, until you have skin in the game, that's just practice, right? And then I watched Johan, and Johan could do that stuff all day long, and he's mystified by it. You could tell, right? The way Johan handles a deck of cards, you could tell he doesn't care if anyone's watching. He just loves that. And it is magic, right? It's magic probably as much for him. You meet Andre, and Andre is just the goddamn soul of magic, right? Magic is magic whether anyone is watching or not. It just is, right? But I do think it takes someone like that to be able to like communicate that on screen, right? I do think it takes someone who magic could be magic even if no one was there to be able to give magic to someone who can't be there.
It's definitely true.
That's the other thing, is I could just throw that out there and like, ooh, yeah, that sounds good as a quote on Twitter. But the truth is that I think it's absolutely possible.
And that's the end of the podcast. Fight.
Yeah, right. No, I do think it's possible. I think people have shown us that it's possible. I think because we're still in the early days and that it took the world going into lockdown to teach us that.
Yeah.
I think it's going to take a long time for that to become a normal thing and for it to remain as elevated as it became, right? Because we do this, right? Magic goes up and down and everything. And I think now that we've touched the sky, we're going to come back down to the ground for a while. Yeah. And then we're going to touch the sky again, and then we'll learn to live in the sky.
But
right. We'll learn the media. We'll learn the hard edges.
Though, like I still think that even in that sense, like of course, like I've never like had the pleasure to see Derek's show live. And I could only see it through a screen, and still I cried, right? Like still it was a beautiful experience, and I think I watched that show like 5 times. But I still think there's like an optimal, suboptimal like situation for magic. Like that show was really good on the screen, but I want to imagine how it was to be there in person. Just like when I watch like a concert of like Red Hot Chili Peppers, for example, you know, like I see them on the screen and it's like great energy. Or you have like that Woodstock video where Flea's playing bass completely naked. And you go like, oh, that man is like so much confidence. That's insane.
Yeah, right.
And then the thing that scares me most is he was completely sober during that whole gig.
Yeah. So now you know it was a conscious decision. Yeah. Okay. No, I know the debate pretty well, and I've heard a lot of sides to it, right? Can magic be as optimal over a screen versus in person? And I think that is to say, that's the same argument as, can music be experienced being read as being listened to? And the answer would always, of course, be no. Right? Music can only be imagined when read and only fully thrived and experienced in person when listened to, right?
Yeah.
It is designed for the medium of being audible, right? Magic is designed by virtue of what it is for being interpersonal, right? For someone to watch, right? Or for someone to experience it. And experiencing it in person will never be the same as experiencing it over a screen. It won't. And try though we may, the uncanny valley is pretty strong and the metaverse ain't there yet. It's always going to take you being in front of a person to experience, I think, optimally. But what happens when the world goes into lockdown, right? There's this whole thing about the idea that wine can be made from any fruit, but the fact that they condense it strictly to grapes causes this push for all of these variations. And you get wineries all over the world that all make very distinct wines, and yet all of it's from grapes, right? Yeah. And they found all of these ways to cause variance, the way that you grow, how long, it has fermented, right? What barrels you put it in, what flavors you add to it, all of these things. I think magic is very much like that. When you restrict it to strictly in person, right, you get all of that variance. How do I prep? How do I speak to these people? What sort of audience am I dealing with? What performance style? Where are they seated? How are they seated? What's the theater look like? All of those things are the variance. Take all that away and now start from something completely different. They only have a screen and they only get to sign in. What do I have control over? What do they see? What camera am I using? Do I use a theater? Do I use my living room? Do I make it look like I'm there with them? Do I send them props? Do they get to use the props? Is it interactive, or do they only follow instructions? I think the fact that we restricted it, or we were restricted to digital media, showed us the possibility. Are they the same thing? No. Will they ever be the same thing? Not likely. But we're still in the infancy. We're still finding out the hard edges. Someone at some point may come along 2 years from now and find out that, yes, there is a link, right? And they discover that link and they extrapolate on that link, and that show is the thing that changes all of our opinion. But oh my God, yes, magic could be experienced over the screen and still scare the hell out of you, right? that might be possible. I don't think we're there yet. I think we've gotten really close. I think we touched the clouds. I don't think we've flown over them. I think we touched them. And now that we've touched them, I think there's going to be enough people who are just curious enough to find out what's above the clouds.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Well,
yeah. So there you go. Yeah. There you go. There's my.
Yeah, it's like assimilating all the.
I'm just thinking about it, honestly.
Yeah. It happens to me when I watch. I don't know if you know Mario Lopez. Do you know him?
Oh yeah. Yeah. He's the guy I want lessons from. And that's definitely happening.
Yeah, it's really nice. Social media magic, you know. Yeah, actually, I agree with your point. You know, the only thing is like I think we need a spectator to make magic possible. You know, I'm not saying the same rule that the magician. I mean like the act of magic. You know, like the elements, the magician, like the impossible fact that is real. You know, like the effect with everything, the reaction of the spectator. So like the element would be magicians, like the impossible fact, and the spectator, because when the spectator experience like this magic, it's when it's going to give you the fact. So in my opinion, the problem is like at this moment, how to make them feel this magic through the screen in the same way that they could live it in life, you know? So in my opinion, it isn't about doing the same magic that you do live through the screen, but doing specific magic through the screen to make this magic look better than in life. I don't know if it makes sense.
No, that absolutely makes sense. I would assume it's probably the same. It's probably very similar to the challenge that well, I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, but back in like the 90s when they were doing a lot of like magic on TV, right? They would always have a section where after this commercial break, David Copperfield will do magic with you at home, right? And they had to figure out a way to bring the magic home, right? You were there counting the stars on the TV or whatever it was, right? But that question was asked, could they make you give a damn about what was happening on the screen, right? And they had the audience for the longest time has been, or the answer has always been audience by proxy. Have an audience there, and then because people are human and they can empathize with other humans, they will watch the audience being mystified, and that mystification will carry over by virtue of empathy, right? They will see it and they will be, right? David Blaine did this, right? When he's doing magic for people. And the majority of his specials were people's reactions to him doing magic, right? It wasn't necessary. Yes, he bet quarters, but also there was that kid going, whoa, cool, right? And everyone was like, yeah, that was cool, wasn't it, right? So it has always been audience by proxy. And then we watched that get bastardized, right? We watched people manipulate the audience, and they were posting videos of like fake audience reactions where everyone's like, you do a double lift and everyone's like, oh, and they're running around everywhere and all that. And that cheapened the experience, right? That took a Ferrari and made it a Honda with a body kit. Now we have something else. Now we found out that you could do magic without the audience by proxy. You are the only audience, right?
Yeah.
And you are still interacted with. You are still spoken to, but it's from someone on the other end of the world. Again, I think you're right. Yes, being in person, it will always be stronger. And having a person there makes magic fuller, right? Trying to do this stuff on your own where you're just practicing it, then the only thing that it can affect is your tiny little microcosm, right? Whatever you think and feel just on your own. The second you add another person, it's like marriage. You find out how small you actually are, how small your world actually is, and that there's a whole other person, right? Your adolescent egocentrism falls away, and you find out you're not necessarily the main character of the world, right? Magic has that effect. Once you do it for an audience, you find out, one, that you're probably not as much of a wizard as you assumed you were, one, but two, you also find out that if you can fake it, if you can infuse that mystery in it, then you can add a little magic to other people's worlds. And then you could go one step further where you don't care whether they think you're a wizard or not, because magic happened all the same. That, I think, is probably the biggest point of doing it online, is the fact that you are removed from it and magic still happens, right? That the best magical experiences happened whether you were there or not, right? Yeah. The way an author can write a story and make you cry at the end, the author ain't there to take the credit. And yet he was still able to affect you through the written word on a page. Technically, that's the tattooed carcass of a tree, and yet you cried over it, right? Yeah. Magic has that ability. We're not there yet. Like I said, we've touched it, but we're not there yet. We still have to find a way to do that on a consistent basis. And then eventually, yeah, I think we could actually remove ourselves. I think we could remove ourselves from the equation, and we could still make the magic happen. And for me, that's the ultimate thing, right? Moses Maimonides talked about the ladder of charity, right? That there were these things of charity, right? That the lowest form was being forced to give, and you know who you give, and you know how much you give, and you know exactly what will happen with it. And that's the lowest form of charity because you're in control of all the aspects. And that the highest form of charity is when you don't know jack diddly squat about it. You give toward that which you know is needed, but you don't know how much you'll have to give, and you don't know for whom it will be given or for what purpose, but you trust that it will go toward a good purpose.
And giving without receiving back.
Right, because it takes the most trust. I feel like that would probably end up being the highest form of magic, is that when you can cause that, when you can cause magic to happen, and you are completely removed from the control of it, and yet you know and you trust that it will happen, and it does, done. That's the highest form. And it would take a world full of lifting to pull it off. But if you could, you've changed magic forever.
Definitely.
So maybe the kids like try to understand that online magic or camp magic isn't like a showcase, because it could be like something more personal. For example, Tamarios used to have like a record, you know, like a very good numbers about being the magician who was for a longest period of time, you know, and seasons on TV in a row, you know, like many years. And he used to say like, the problem is like, I can't throw, you know, through the screen, like very personalized messages. So he used to start to do doing things like, he used to look at the camera,
right?
And he was saying like, you lady, stop hitting your daughter and pay attention on the ship, you know? So that's something very clever, because today with Camp Magic, if you do a show through Zoom, you know the people who are on the show.
Right.
You can look at them through the camera, and they are right there with you, and you can see the reaction. So if you say that, you can tell actually the name, and you can say, hey, you, like Karen, stop talking to your husband and pay attention on my shit. So
right.
It's totally different.
You could interact
with
them, right? And or you could be like, okay, hold your card up. No, higher. No, to the left, right? Like you could interact, and it's real, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it is. But that can also be a distraction, right? That can be the equivalent of like the people on stage. You know how magic, the majority of magic is the suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
No one thinks you're a wizard. No one thinks you graduated Hogwarts, right? In general. I mean, unless you meet John Wilson, then you might actually believe magic is. But like most of magic requires the suspension of disbelief. And the second that you snap people out of it, you have to start from scratch, right? So as much as I appreciate the fact that you can interact with the audience, the fact that you can do that and the fact that it's happening right now, and it may not have anything to do with the performance, hey, lady, stop kicking your dog. That would distract. If that happened in a theater, I'd be like, why the fuck is someone kicking their dog in a theater? But if it happened on a Zoom call, I'd be like, yeah, you tell her to stop kicking her dog. But now I've forgotten about the magic. Now we're moving on to the lady kicking her dog. So there is a fine line there, right? Like, how much do you interact with the people because you can interact with the people, right?
Mm.
There's so much the way that Juan would interact with the audience, or the way that Martin Nash, right? Martin Nash would be a perfect example of this. The way he would interact with it, the charming cheat and everything. However he interacted with it became a part of the show. It never distracted from it. And I've been to Zoom shows where, because they could interact with you, it became a distraction because there's just that slight delay, right? It's just off-putting enough as if I did this to you. Hello. Right? Like a delay where it's not like something's off. The fact that you know, hey, Bob, go ahead and hold up your card. No, to the left. No, turn up your volume, right? That second is enough to like distract from the magic. Whereas the best ones that I've seen, they had a stage manager. Everything was checked ahead of time. Everyone was muted until it was time for someone to talk, and only their mic was turned on and the volume was checked ahead of time. That's why I think the preparation is so key, is because to do a good show through the screen, it takes just as much, if not more preparation than if that person was there live, because the internet could go down, right? Like, just out of nowhere, the internet could shut off, and now you got to deal with that. Or the person that you were talking to has bad reception, or any number of other things. You have to be ready to respond at a moment's notice. Otherwise, people are distracted and you're starting from scratch. You have to build up the suspension of disbelief all over again, which is hard enough to do over the screen. And now you got to do it while people are throwing cabbages at you. So, anyway, yeah. So magic on the screen is hard. There we go. Yeah. There's the lesson.
Yeah, but I think like if you learned like if you follow the general theme of the podcast, like most people that have made it are like authentic human beings, right? So they're people being truly themselves, being comfortable in that, like being whole-rounded human beings, showing you something, and only they can do the show like they do.
Yeah.
So in that same sense, how should you do magic through Zoom? Be yourself, like, and that doesn't have to be like how you are on the couch. Like, you can do what Darren Brown says, like make the things that you would like about yourself and that other people find interesting bigger.
Right.
But at the same time, also interact with other people. Like the fact that we're talking now with each other, that's like we're having a conversation, right, is what keeps it interesting. But if someone was just talking through the screen nonstop, you would be like, yeah.
Yeah, now you're watching a YouTube video.
Exactly.
Now it's no different than watching someone having a conversation on YouTube, right? It is tangibly the difference between watching a lecture on YouTube versus having a deep conversation in a noisy bar, right? Yeah. Because there are so many things that could distract, and yet you find yourself totally engrossed with the person that's in front of you. That's probably the best simile that I can think of, is the people who do the best are the people who could have a deep conversation with you in a noisy bar.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Anyway. There you go. There's your sound.
That being said, I have to. I want to thank you so much for being here. I have to leave soon because it's getting later and I have to work tomorrow. So
no, that's fair. Yeah, I keep forgetting you're on the other side of the world. Thank you guys so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here with us and for sharing all your knowledge and your experiences.
Happy to.
If you drink and I will ever meet you, I'll be sure to buy you a beer. So
sold. You get one and then I'll get one, and then we'll both be
right.
Be fine.
Awesome. Okay. Right. Thank you for being here, Jeremy. See you later.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you so much.